What is up, everyone? If you're watching this video, welcome. This is CK from Bitcoin Magazine. I'm here with Rob Odell from Salt. Rob and I are actually we've hung out several times and we're quite good friends. So glad to be doing this video with him. A few weeks ago, Bitcoin Magazine did an epic live stream to celebrate the halving, and Salt was really kind in supporting it, and we're really adamant about doing something special for the Bitcoin community. So thank you, Salt, for doing that. But out of that, there was a lot of concerns that were voiced by the Bitcoin community around Salt's business, and then in kind of in particular, some activity around fundraising in 2017. So we want to talk about Salt and Bitcoin and address a lot of these concerns that Bitcoiners have towards Salt, and kind of go in that direction. So without further ado, want to introduce Rob Odell again, head of product at Salt, and just kind of address some of the concerns of the Bitcoin community.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, I remember, I forgot which conference it was, but you gave me a one-of-a-kind Bitcoin, or I guess one of 60 or limited run Bitcoin shirts that
Yeah.
I love. I actually had, I was at a party, a crypto specific party, and just was like trying to figure out how to introduce myself to Andreas. And I asked him if he would sign my shirt, and he did. And he actually took a picture of the back of my shirt. So somewhere in the world, there's hopefully still a picture of me on Andreas' phone. So I think that's pretty cool. And the whole impetus was the shirt that you gave me. So I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you brought up a couple of good points specifically about Bitcoin. I think, some of the things that we as Salt, the company, have done over the years is adding other collateral types, validates the need for that from those communities. But one of our strongest communities has always been Bitcoin. That's how Salt got started in the beginning, and was around the idea that these founders wanted to be able to unlock the value of it without selling it. And they understood, the long-term, the hodl mentality, and really wanted to have that option. And when they couldn't find it, that's how they started Salt. And then
Hey,
early on,
Rob, real
yeah.
quick. So why don't you give just a quick 2 minutes about what Salt does, and then how, and then you can kind of get into how Bitcoin and crypto started, or the impotence of starting the business.
Absolutely, yeah. So Salt is a crypto-backed lender, where you have the ability to deposit your Bitcoin or transfer your Bitcoin to Salt, and then we keep it safe for the duration of a loan that you would get from us, and we give you cash against that. So in a traditional system, you would normally apply using your credit score. In this case, we're using Bitcoin as quote unquote your credit score, because what that allows you to do is prove that you own this asset, you can transfer it, and then we keep it safe for the duration of the loan, and then give you dollars to go spend, just like you would expect in a traditional loan. Except for in this case, you don't need a credit score, and Bitcoin is really your collateral. And so that's what we have built a business around, is that concept.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And sorry I interrupted. You were kind of talking about the impotence of Salt was, people had crypto. These are people who had Bitcoin and crypto, and they wanted to be able to unlock it without actually selling their stash.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So, the hodl mentality is strong with, depending on how early you got into the crypto, but I think it becomes something that people adopt over the course of discovering more about crypto and Bitcoin specifically. So for Salt, we've seen, since the beginning, a majority of our loans have been backed by Bitcoin. So when people deposit different assets, we've added new ones over the years, but Bitcoin is still maintained about over 80%. I think at this point, it's about 85% of the collateral on our platform is Bitcoin. So that means that there's a lot of strength in that community and a lot of belief in the long-term value of it. And we see a lot of what we do is monitoring, right? Price of Bitcoin fluctuates, and so we have to monitor the price of Bitcoin. We have to send you all these updates and all these things about your account and your particular loan that we've made really intuitive, I think, through our user experience. And so we see people deposit more Bitcoin in times when Bitcoin's going down. We see the price of Bitcoin going up, and we see people taking out more dollars and unlocking more value from their Bitcoin. So it's something that's been really, awesome to watch from a distance.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different lenders that also do the same thing. I know a big question is like, I know you guys did a Salt token in 2017. Do you need that token at all to interact with the platform?
So early on, you actually did need the token, and that gave you different tiers of access, and it gave you essentially more features to be able to use the salt token. And one of the things that we have really built into our process is the ability to gather user feedback, and we listen to our community, we listen to our customers, and we make changes based on that. And so we've removed that need now, and it's been that way for about a year now. And so you don't need the salt token to interact with the platform on any level. However, if you do have it, you have the ability to unlock more value, potentially, and extra benefits. So for example, you can use it as collateral for a loan, and it can be a certain percentage mix of your collateral. You can also use it to reduce your interest rate. And so that's one of the things we've worked to add into the platform over time, is more value for the salt token than for salt token holders.
I mean, not to like make a lot of comparisons, but it kind of sounds similar to like what exchanges do with their tokens and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like a platform token.
It is like a platform token, and it really has, it's not really meant to have value outside of our platform. We really, built it to kind of, return that value back to people within the Salt ecosystem. And we're, like I said, we're working with a lot of different customers currently to come up with what we're going to be adding and rolling out as additional benefits. And we've explored a lot of different options, and we've had a lot of really good ideas. And I'm looking forward to being able to release some of those ideas in the next couple of months, and hopefully sooner than later. But a lot of that timing depends on some of the removing some of the blockers and implementations and that sort of thing.
So I mean, there's kind of two things I want to get to. One is, you guys have a lot of Bitcoin first technology, and you guys are definitely, running Bitcoin the right way internally on the back end. But I think people also want to know like what do you think is like, what do you make of 2017 and kind of like all of that and fundraising around Ethereum tokens and stuff like that? Do you kind of have any comment around that?
I mean, I guess the only thing that I would say about that, and having, it being 2020 and us having, hindsight, that's also 2020, we kind of have the ability to take a look at that time period and see a lot of excitement about something that I don't think that, people necessarily fully understood, but wanted to get involved in. And I think that when you look back on things like that, and I guess maybe this is part of my own personal philosophy, is you kind of have all the things that you've learned, and you try to take that and absorb that knowledge and be able to kind of move forward and move past that, and really say like, look, we created a program, we created all this infrastructure and all this token around a business model, and we've worked to implement it over time, and we haven't always hit a home run every time, and we haven't always been able to do exactly what we want to do in regards to how we treat the token, how it's perceived, what's the regulatory environment around that kind of thing. And so the more that we learn about that and the more clarity that we're provided, we have the ability to really kind of move forward and add that value. And I would say, it probably wasn't the best for 2017 as a whole. I think in general, people have some, mixed feelings about that year, but I think it was a good way to introduce a lot of people very quickly to a new idea that probably accelerated it, I think, in the end. And we'll look back on it as like, hey, we learned a lot, and now we can kind of impart some of that wisdom, hopefully going forward, and build that into what we're doing as we go into the future. I think that, the other thing that I've kind of learned being involved is, I came into Salt in October of 2017, kind of after all, the dust had settled, quote unquote, a little bit from all of that. And I've really understood that each type of crypto has its own potential use case and own potential value to the community that supports it. And I think for things like Ethereum, there's a lot of transferability. There's a lot of building things on top of it that are repeating infrastructure that already exists, like cash payments and things like that. Whereas Bitcoin has a potentially different use case and reach and ethos for what it's trying to achieve. And I think that, we often get caught up in which one is better, but I think that they're probably equally better in different ways. And I think that, for Bitcoin specifically, you kind of have this really like gold type and ability to store value and just transferability.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about how Bitcoin is pristine collateral, and even in the Ethereum ecosystem, you're seeing Bitcoin-backed tokens taking off inside like the different derivative apps and stuff like that, and gaining more liquidity than any other instrument that are ETH based. So I mean, Bitcoin is a very good crypto money, and that's why Bitcoin Magazine is so interested in Bitcoin in particular. So I guess just to put this 2017 thing to bed, at least for this video, how would you kind of characterize, Salt's business as a whole, and then, with I know you talked about it, but with Salt's token, and then we can kind of just get past it. Like, just give one last, like, this is what Salt is as a whole, including the token.
Yeah, so I mean, we really have, like I said, we've really learned a lot from that experience and what people care most about, and have, personally, I've worked pretty much every day thinking nonstop about ways that we can continue to provide value. And I know that there's almost everyone else at the company is doing the same thing on a daily basis, if not a weekly basis, to understand what customers care about and to build a product that will be useful, that will provide the assurances that you are looking for when you're trying to unlock value from an asset like Bitcoin without having to sell it. And I would say that the SALT membership token is a really big part of us being here today and us continuing to provide value in perpetuity. And I think that no ideas are off the table. So I would say if you have any ideas for how we can improve the experience or improve things around that, we're always willing to listen, and we've made adjustments in the past based on user feedback, and are happy to continue that process.
Cool. So, like you said, 80% of your guys' loan book, or 85% is in Bitcoin. That's aligns pretty well with the Pareto distribution. So I'm not surprised, but it's nice to see it confirmed. In terms of like what you guys are doing that's like Bitcoin native or Bitcoin first, can you kind of talk about like how Salt is actually interacting with Bitcoin directly?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, early on, we were a Bitcoin, Bitcoin was the main asset that we wanted to create the business, or that the founders wanted to create the business around. And, before I even started working at Salt, I think I mentioned in the fireside chat, but came to a Bitcoin book club and was learning about, all the nuance around Bitcoin. And obviously when you're first getting involved, you think, well, okay, that's how it is with every blockchain that exists, but that's not the case. And so Bitcoin is really the benchmark of how we built our own in-house custody solution, around how we built our multi-signature processes. For example, we run our own nodes for every asset we support, specifically Bitcoin. That's very important to have that sort of self-sovereign, verifiability on our own platform, so we're not relying on other people's nodes. And there's just a lot of things that are core to our business. It's really the benchmark of custody, and the benchmark of what a blockchain means to us as a company, because we take a look at what happens with Bitcoin, how reliable it is, how great it is, how good it is to work with. And then when we're adding a new asset, that's again what we compare it to. And so if it doesn't have these certain things, then we really have to kind of evaluate how to be able to support that. And if you look at the assets we support, a lot of the other assets we support are either Bitcoin-like or Bitcoin-similar blockchains, or Ethereum and ERC20 tokens. Currently we don't support a lot of other blockchains, and there's a reason for that. I think it's proving that stuff out, but it's also, there's a pretty good benchmark in Bitcoin that exists already. So if you're not as good as Bitcoin, like, what's the point?
So why do you think it's important for Salt to support a variety of assets when, the majority of the business is in Bitcoin as it is?
That's a pretty common question that we get even internally, and something that we think really hard about when we're adding a new asset type. And it's all based on demand, and it's based on us as a business we're taking a stance in some ways, but we're also saying we realize that there are other assets in the world that people want to tokenize, or that they want to borrow against. And one of the visions that I have for Salt in the future is, the ability to mix collaterals. Like, I think it's not for us as a business to say that this is the only thing that's valuable to you as a consumer. And I think, at the end of the day, we want to be able to, I would love a world where more assets are tokenized on various blockchains that we support, not just cryptographic assets like Bitcoin, where you have part of your house or collectible items or gold, for example, that we already support. I think that there's a trend in that direction, and where we become sort of this asset-backed lender that's providing technology, or providing the ability for people to unlock value from assets that they currently have sitting idle. In an ideal world, everything is producing something for somebody somewhere. And I think at this point, right now that's limited to these assets we support. But as we grow, I think that there's a big opportunity for us to kind of extend that out a little bit.
So I think we've hit on a lot of the things that we had laid out here. Rob, do you have any kind of like last messages for the Bitcoin community as a whole? And if people have more questions, where can they learn more?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll say that we support a lot of different assets, and we always look to add new ones based on demand again and what consumers really like. But going back to the core and the ethos of Salt is, we have 35% of the people that work at Salt are certified Bitcoin professionals. Our CTO sits on the board of directors or chair. He'll correct me later, but the committee that basically issues the exam for the certified Bitcoin professional. So we're deeply ingrained in the Bitcoin community from the beginning and still are today, and do a lot to support that and promote Bitcoin education. And so I'd say I would just leave you with, if you have any other questions, again, feedback. I'm personally on Twitter. Salt's Twitter account is a great place to ask questions. And even just our support team. We have a customer service is one of the things that differentiates us from pretty much every other lender and every other company in the space. You have a phone that you can pick up and talk to somebody, during business hours in Denver, but we also have 24-hour support otherwise. So just being able to talk to people and have your questions answered and have your voice heard, I think is something that really differentiates us. And we're happy to provide that to the community. And really, when you're looking at taking out this loan of any size, we want you to feel comfortable with that process and what that means to you. And we understand that you're trusting us, and we want to be able to extend that bridge of trust to as many people as would be interested in taking us up on that offer.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Rob, for taking these questions and addressing these concerns directly.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.